Okay, we'll start with this per tweet from Jake Donovan. Rigo versus Casimero did the 279,000 number. The last one is the post-fight wrap. It's still 278,998 more than needed to watch the fight.
I've seen a lot of comments like that.
From the pundits, from the fans, people in the business like Raging Babe.
This wasn't a good fight to watch.
And even for a degenerate, hardcore boxing fan that'll watch almost any two guys or any two gals fight, it just wasn't a good fight to watch. Least of all for the casual observer. You're not going to turn anybody into a boxing fan with a fight like that. Guillermo Rigondeaux himself says, "No one can KO me. I am not a picture on a bag, and unless you can actually box and know how to cut a ring, be happy throwing punches at the air. I still have my chin."
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a hard guy to knock out.
Never been knocked out, and I think given Guillermo Rigondeaux's base style, he might go his entire career having never been knocked out.
If that's any consolation.
There is a debate, a very small debate, in some quarters, some circles, as to whether or not you could even classify what Guillermo Rigondeaux did on Saturday night as boxing, since it looked a lot more like freeze tag with boxing gloves.
Not actual boxing.
What? Was that boxing in its purest form? Is that what we're supposed to file that under?
Yeah, it's high-level stuff, man.
I'll do us both a favor and tell you, save your breath. Save your talking points, save your debate, because whatever that was, people don't want to see it.
I don't want to see it.
So the other stuff doesn't matter. The ideology of it all, your ideology versus mine versus the judges.
Doesn't really matter.
It's the hurt business. And you gotta try to put a hurting on the other guy. Not the paying customers, not the paying fans and their eyes. Because the only thing that fight did on Saturday night was hurt my fucking eyes.
Fighting sleep a lot harder than he was fighting John Rigo-Casimero.
I told you why I think that is. I think that Guillermo Rigondeaux's reflexes have dulled over time, the slow decay that comes with age, so much so that he doesn't have the same sharpness in his movements. His in and out game, as it were, has been lost to Father Time. So either he's moving away and he's staying so far away that it's hardly a fight, or he's not moving and he's getting hit. The way he got hit quite a bit in the Julio Ceja fight. There's no in-between left for Guillermo Rigondeaux. And we talked about how Guillermo Rigondeaux has no plans to retire. He plans on fighting on, though the sport of boxing might retire him, since I can't see him getting very many television slots performing the way that he performed.
Listen, there are actually people willing to argue about this.
But I'm not one of them, and you're not going to convince me that people want to see that.
People don't want to see that shit.
In heavyweight news, Joyce, via his social media account, tweeted, "King Kong or Andy Ruiz? No problem. Anyone else?"
I like both of those fights.
In no particular order. I could go for Joyce versus King Kong Ortiz, or I could go for Joyce versus Andy Ruiz. The problem is,
You already know what the problem is.
neither of those fights are likely to happen. Andy Ruiz Jr.'s name has been tacked on to the name of his stablemate, Charles Martin. In all likelihood, Andy will end up fighting Charles Martin before he ends up fighting Joyce. King Kong, there's really no excuse for a King Kong fight not to happen, aside from the politics.
Wilder's not available for a trilogy.
Not that anybody wants to see one. Andy Ruiz and Charles Martin, they have each other.
I don't think Luis Ortiz has a fight date.
It's so frustrating, because in this sport, what's sensible and sensical at times is what doesn't happen. It is not only sensible and sensical for Joyce to fight someone the likes of a Luis Ortiz at this point, especially when Luis, he ain't got nothing going on and he ain't getting any younger.
It should be an easy fight to make.
Yeah, if should wasn't a four-letter word in the sport of boxing.
But it is.
And I both know it. Heavyweight personality from right here in the US of A, Chris Lovejoy, said, "I just talked to Mahmoud Charr. He says he wants Joyce next." Mahmoud Charr, who very recently filed suit against none other than Hall of Fame promoter Don King. He's trying to recover $4 million in damages, and court fees.
You know, because he got fucked out of the Trevor Bryan fight.
Manuel Charr's lawsuit alleges tortious interference, civil conspiracy, and 2 counts of breach of contract filed in a district court down there in Florida.
Because he didn't get to fight Trevor Bryan for that baby belt.
Trevor ended up fighting his stablemate, former WBC heavyweight champion Bermain Stavern, instead, and as you can imagine, Manuel Charr is none too pleased. He's not happy about it, and he is seeking compensation. Don't know where that's gonna go.
$4 million.
$4.5 million. In excess of $4.5 million. In attorney's fees, cost, and interest. No idea what's gonna happen with that. Legal woes aside, the story seems to be, at least according to Chris Lovejoy, that Manuel Charr is open to a Joyce fight. And, you know, Joe might actually end up fighting the likes of a Mahmoud Charr before he ends up in the ring with an Andy Ruiz or a King Kong Ortiz. I just don't see those fights happening. And I'd like to be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. It's entirely possible that Joyce keeps busy with a guy like Charr.
Yeah, it could happen.
And what becomes of Luis Ortiz? I don't know. Maybe they find him some stiff to fight on PBC Island while he waits for the winner of Andy Ruiz versus Charles Martin to emerge. And maybe he'll fight them, and maybe that'll take a while, and maybe that's a bit unethical because Luis Ortiz, he's not getting any younger. He's a pretty old guy, and he needs to do stuff now. He doesn't need to be on anybody's waiting list. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see Joyce versus Ortiz happening.
And that's all I have to say about that.
In other news, former WBA and Ring Magazine super middleweight champion Callum Smith will be taking on Lenin Castillo to be added to the Joshua versus Usyk undercard on September 25th.
What do I think about this, Nose?
I know that there are other light heavyweights out there that the British boxing public would like to see Callum Smith swap punches with. Guys like Callum Johnson, Craig Richards, Anthony Yard,
Lyndon Arthur,
Joshua Buatsi. I know that the British boxing public would be a lot more interested in seeing Callum fight one of those names than Lenin Castillo. They're probably not even familiar with Lenin Castillo. But when you think about those names and what they got going on, you know, Frank Warren, old fish eyes, he's got a plan for Anthony and Lyndon to fight for a second time. They're supposed to be having a rematch, so they're not available for Callum Smith to fight. And even if they were, promotional politics. We all know that Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, neither one of those two guys is likely to do the other any favors.
Frank isn't just going to send one of his guys over there.
Not just, and that in and of itself takes Lyndon Arthur, Anthony Yard, and Callum Johnson. That takes him off the table, at least for the immediate future. I think Craig Richards, who was very recently in action against Dimitri Bivol, I think Craig is a guy that some of the British boxing fans would like to see in there with Callum Smith. But the thing is that Craig Richards, outside of that Dimitri Bivol fight,
The one he had very recently.
what sets Craig Richards apart? What makes him head and shoulders above Lenin Castillo? They both fought Dimitri Bivol, and they both lost to Dimitri Bivol.
And they're both big kids for this division.
Both guys got a lot of size on their side. You know, Lenin Castillo, he looks like a Washington Heights version of Busy Bone. It's no runt, this guy.
He's big for 175 like Craig.
With the difference being that Craig's coming right off a loss to Dimitri Bivol not that long ago, whereas Lenin Castillo was in action very recently against Ronald Gonzalez in something like 4-5 rounds.
That was last month.
I'm actually okay with the Callum Smith versus Lenin Castillo fight. I'm okay with it because Lenin fought Dimitri Bivol the same way that Craig Richards fought Dimitri Bivol. You know, he also fought Marcus Brown.
He lost to Marcus Brown.
Right now, Lenin Castillo's in the winner's bracket. He's coming off a W. Craig Richards isn't. I think it's a solid choice for Callum Smith's maiden voyage to the light heavyweight division. It's a good welcoming party. And if by some chance Callum can stop this guy, knock him out, I think that's saying something. I think it is because Dimitri Bivol couldn't knock out Lenin Castillo.
Neither could Marcus Brown.
In 25 professional contests, 25 professional bouts, Lenin Castillo has never been stopped. Callum Smith, he has since joined forces with Buddy McGirt. He's no longer training under the watchful eye of Joe Gallagher. He's training here stateside at the Blue Moon Boxing Club, Buddy. And I'm curious to see what kind of fighter Buddy can mold him into. Now, I'm curious to see what Buddy can get out of the very statuesque Callum Smith, who quite possibly, is a guy might fit right in at 175. And this is a good fight to test the waters.
This fight's up there for Callum.
Right there, on the matchroom side of things. They can move him towards an eventual Dimitri Bivol fight at 175 pounds. We know that's a fight that Dimitri's receptive to. Right up there at 175 pounds.
Right there.
You got a former super middleweight champion in Zerto Ramirez, who I could see Callum Smith possibly fighting sometime down the line. I mean, that's another possibility as well. And you know, while all of this is going on, maybe you have a Craig Richards fight in the mean-in-between time once Craig gets himself back in the winner's bracket. Callum Smith himself, he's coming off a loss. That loss to Canelo Alvarez. Essentially what I'm getting at is there's no reason to be impatient here. And even the opponent choice, Lenin Castillo as an opponent, it's not a bad choice. Not a bad opponent selection at all. And I think it makes the Joshua versus Usyk card a little bit deeper. I think the light heavyweight division is that much deeper for Callum Smith integrating himself within it, because you got Joe Smith Jr., Artur Beterbiev, Dimitri Bivol, Craig Richards,
Joshua Buatsi.
that even if you factor in the rift, the long-standing rivalry between Frank and Eddie, you still got a lot of fights right there that you can make, even without Frank's boys, even without Frank's light heavyweights. There's still a good number of fights that are realistic and reasonable right there at 175 for Callum Smith. So I'm okay with Lenin Castillo as an opponent.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad fight.
Consider that Zerto Ramirez kicked off his light heavyweight debut with Tommy Karpensi. You'll excuse me for saying so, but Lenin Castillo, comparatively, is in a better place than Tommy Karpensi was.
Yeah, when Zerto fought him.
I've honestly seen Joyce, so I'm okay with Smith versus Castillo. I think it's an alright fight. I think it's a good addition to the card. And I'm looking forward to Callum Smith's light heavyweight debut. Let's see what Buddy can get out of this guy. What can he add to his toolbox, to his repertoire? Let's see what kind of fighter Callum Smith is under the watchful eye of Buddy McGirt. And finally, an update on the ongoing Crawford versus Porter situation. I'm sure you've heard about it already. PBC, Top Rank, they don't expect to reach a deal. The WBO purse bid is going to be called. BoxingScene.com has learned that infrequent discussions over the past 3.5 weeks between representatives for Al Haymon's Premier Boxing Champions, Porter, and Bob Arum's Top Rank Inc., Crawford, haven't produced much movement towards an agreement required to avoid a purse bid for their welterweight title fight. Barring an unforeseen change, neither side anticipates striking a deal before Friday's deadline established by the WBO. If Crawford and Porter cannot come to an agreement by then, the WBO will order a purse bid. BoxingScene.com has been informed Top Rank and one of the promoters that operates on behalf of Haymon's PBC would bid on what would be a pay-per-view bout between Crawford and Porter. In its announcement of the Crawford versus Porter order, the WBO revealed they must adhere to a 60-40 purse split rather than the usual 80-20 split for mandated matches, based on an extensive evaluation of the 3 previous places earned by both boxers. Crawford would have to move forward according to the terms of the winning bid, or he would be stripped of the WBO belt he won by stopping Australia's Jeff Warren in June 2018 in Las Vegas. The Omaha, Nebraska native has one fight remaining on the contract extension that the 3-division champion signed with Top Rank in the summer of 2018.
The moment of truth approaches.
Whether Top Rank wins the place bid,
They do.
or the PBC, one way or another, both of them intend to stage the fight as a pay-per-view. Even terrain there.
Regardless of which one of them
And
wins.
if by some chance, Eddie Hearn, who actually expressed an interest in placing a bid for this fight in order to host it on DAZN, if he decides to crash the party and he places the winning bid, then we see the fight as part of our DAZN subscriptions. I think that's a favorable outcome for everybody. The fighters get their money, we get to see the fight at no additional charge.
Yeah, that's if Eddie Hearn places the winning bid.
Given what has already taken place between Triller, George Kambosos, and Teofimo Lopez, I don't think anybody wants Triller to get involved. I think a lot of boxing fans look at that Lopez versus Kambosos situation and how Triller won the purse bid, but the fight still hasn't happened. It still hasn't come off. I think a lot of boxing fans see that, and they would prefer that Triller not get involved, that they not place any bid on the fight, because they haven't been able to make this fight, these two guys, lightweight materialize. So I don't actually want Triller to get involved myself.
That is 3 separate scenarios right there, though.
If Top Rank places the winning bid, that's one scenario. If the PBC places the winning bid, that's another scenario. And if Matchroom beats them both out and they place the winning bid, that's another scenario, a third scenario. There's also a fourth scenario.
If somebody withdraws.
The fourth scenario, if Terrence Crawford decides to relinquish the WBO title in order to avoid the purse bid and the responsibilities that come with it, or if Sean Portier decides to withdraw from the situation altogether to fight somebody on PBC's Isolation Island. That's a fourth scenario. That's something that could happen.
I really don't think Crawford's gonna vacate his title.
Hand on heart, I'd sooner expect Sean Porter to withdraw from this situation altogether, walk away, before I'd expect Terrence Crawford to drop that belt, before I'd expect Terrence Crawford to drop that title ahead of this purse bid on Friday.
Yeah, I don't think Crawford's gonna drop that belt.
It's the moment of truth is what it is. If Sean Porter feels that he's worth a certain dollar amount, then let his own people put it up. The people over there at the PBC, Al Heyman, Tom Brown, who I'm sure is going to be the one doing the bidding in this situation.
This is what I've been telling you.
If Sean feels that Bob's not going to pay him the way he deserves to get paid, that's okay. Sean's own people can put up the money. Let them put it up and let them do the fight on their side of things. That's the beauty of this purse bid situation. That's the environment that it creates, an environment where there's actually a solution.
You can't come to a deal?
You can't reach agreeable terms, shoot it out in the purse bid. Let's see who's got the bigger guns. And let's see who's worth what to who and who's really committed to doing this fight. You know, Terrence Crawford, he's got one fight left on his top-ranked contract. This could be it. And Al Heyman might use this as a segue to entice Terrence Crawford to cross over, placing the winning bid for this fight, getting him on that side of things. I'm not crazy about the idea Terrence Crawford might fight under the PBC banner because of the schedule that they keep their fighters on. They don't keep their guys all that active now, do they? And Terrence going over there, it doesn't guarantee him certain fights.
Yeah, it brings him closer to those guys.
Gary Russell and Leo Santa Cruz have been under that same banner for years, and they haven't fought. Can't seem to get Jermall Charlo in the ring with David Benavidez. They fight under the same banner. Errol Spence Jr. is no longer interested in facing Keith Thurman, even though they fight under that same banner.
There's no guarantees.
But that is the situation, and it is something that we have to entertain, unfortunately, because this is Terrence Crawford's last fight under this top-ranked contract, and who knows if Bob Arum wants to renew. The feeling is that he might not want to, because he can't help Terrence Crawford much in this situation. He can give him Josh Taylor and who else?
PBC's got control over the welterweight and super welterweight divisions.
147 and 154. There just ain't a lot of places for Terrence Crawford to go. All the other welterweight titles are on the PBC side of things, and up there at 154, all four of them, every single last one of those alphabet titles, it's over there on PBC's Isolation Island.
Could Terrence Crawford cross over?
It is a possibility. Though first, we do have to get through this purse bid, set to go down on Friday, and honest to God, I don't know what's going to happen.